Prison bars are literally the only thing that separates my mom and I, and it's not anything more than that. Regardless, she's always found a way to let me know that she loves me.
So when you're constructing your thesis, you really need to be keeping the secondary sources in mind.
My name is Kyndia Riley. I'm 20 years old, and I'm a student at the University of Virginia. When I was 2 years old, both of my mom and my dad were convicted with nonviolent drug offenses. My grandmother and my grandfather raised my sister and I. My sister was 7 years older than me. She had cerebral palsy, and with her being disabled and my mother just going to prison, it was already a lot of weight to hold. My grandparents became my foundation. They became my support mechanisms. They were the ones that I turned to when I needed something. My grandparents had told me that my parents were working for the government, and it was just this story that I thought was amazing. So when I get a phone call and this call is from a federal prison and I start asking questions, I'm just ecstatic because I'm like, oh, my parents are like secret spies and they're just hiding out in a prison system and everything is okay. And then to go to elementary school and have kids teasing me on the bus saying, oh, your mom's in prison, and I try to reaffirm with no, she works for the government. And then finally, one day, one of the older children on the bus said, no, your mom's locked up. And I went home and I asked my grandmother what was going on, and finally she told me the truth about everything. After that, I would go into the classroom and I would act up. I destroyed property. I was cursing at teachers. One day, I wrote a letter to one of my teachers and I threatened her. I had to meet with the dean of students and a police officer. And then finally, my dean of students said, why are you doing this? And I said, because if I get in enough trouble, I'll go be with my parents. The cop said, no, you won't go with your parents if you keep getting in trouble. You're gonna go to a juvenile detention center. And from that point forward, a light switch clicked. That's 197 years, all over just conspiracy to distribute said drugs. I think that it's just not fair.
Well, the war on drugs, that was an affliction that hit mostly communities of color, ended up with a lot of people being arrested for draconian charges. So you get a case of somebody with 13 life sentences, which sounds absurd, but it was really driven by the fear and the politics of fear in the 80s. If you took all of the people who were serving time on drug charges and you took them out and tried them again today, the laws would be pretty much the same, but I think you'd find judges a little more flexible in the sentencing.
I don't think I blame anyone for what happened to my parents. I think that they were at that point conscious of their decisions. It is a consequence that they have to deal with. My mom just sent me pictures of herself just as like a look. And I remember her calling me the next morning and being like, I sent you all these pictures, did you get them yet? And I was like, you sent them yesterday. The first memory of my mom is Mother's Day. I was about 6 years old. We walked to the visitation room and we walked directly to her, and she just runs up and hugs me. Her hair fell in my face, and literally all I could smell was like the aroma of her hair just wafting over me. And it was just the embraceful feeling of it, how she made me feel in that moment, that just makes it something that I could just never erase from my mind. So my mom missed basically every pivotal point of my life physically. Even in terms of the major things that did happen, she's missed everything in her own life as well. This is my first time here since everyone's passing. I've never been here before. Honestly, I feel numb. Being here hurts me, but it heals me at the same time. It's sort of the cause and cure.
She lost her grandmother and she lost her sister. And she was going to college. It was a tough time for everybody. But she still strived, and it made me even proud of her because she said that she was going to go forth for what she wanted to do. And she had told my mom she wanted to go to college, and she said she's doing this with my mom.
Where's college from? Santra an inmate at a federal prison. This call is being recorded and is subject to monitoring.
Hello?
Hey, Kyndia.
Hey, Mom.
They would just talk on the telephone all the time. This was a connection of love through the phone and visits.
Are you okay?
I can't talk long because I don't have any money.
Okay. Doesn't sound like you're having a good day.
I'm just tired of, struggling in here.
My mom has this guilty feeling that always seems to hover over top of her like a dark cloud. She always thinks that I'm gonna hate her for going to prison. And I think if I could always embed one thought just in her heart, it would be that I'd never hate her for going away. If anything, I feel as though it pulled me a lot closer to her.
I love you and you have a wonderful day. I'll go check your email at 7 o'clock.
Okay.
All right?
All right.
Love you.
Love you
Tell everybody else that I love them and I hope that I'm going to feel better, okay?
Okay. Ever since my mom was gone, it was sort of like she was fighting to get back to me and I was fighting to get to her. And it was like she needed help and she didn't have resources outside of the prison. She started getting me to read law books, to learn how to navigate the legal system, just to understand how to help her to get home. Her molding me to do that, when I got older, it helped me to help her send motions to the court. It helped me to write up different legal documents for her and helped me to just make the right connections to get her home. Now she has a release date of March 14th, 2022.
This call is from Santra.
Hey, Mom.
It was very hard to be separated by prison walls.
Yeah.
And it was the most difficult experience that I could ever experience in my life. It made me regret every poor choice that I ever made. I was just in despair.
Right.
And I longed to touch my baby. And all I had was the memories of you. And that's the only things that helped me to keep my sanity and keep my mind in a better place. And that's what keeps me going in here, Kyndia. But I can't wait to come home to be with you.
Over time, things have been so complicated and so hard that it can become very easy to forget how much we actually love each other. It's just good to remind her that I care about her and I'll never stop.
I think it's great that she could sit down and say, oh yeah, that is my mother.
So my mother really looks like me.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm just as cool as her.
Yes, you are. A mother's love cannot be destroyed by prison bars or anything the prison system throws at a child.
I don't tell people about my parents' incarceration because when someone hears it for the first time, it just elicits such self-pity and they want to be sorry and they want to be upset for me when it's been kind of the grandeur of my life. It's been a catalyst for everything I'm doing and it helps me be an element of change.